Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead.
And part and parcel of that is trying to manage artsy-fartsy people is extremely difficult. And my experience from managing poorly artsy-fartsy people in my movie experience shaded or clouded my judgment. Number 4, the Pixar people had no contracts. If you're not there yet, the Pixar people had no contracts. So trying to manage a herd of cats with no leashes on them, forget about it, in my judgment. Now, only after the merger got underway did they decide to manage Pixar by itself as a whole entity unit. I thought, as did a lot of other people, that they were going to assimilate Pixar into Disney.
But they didn't.
They didn't, but everybody thought that was going to happen, and they realized 95% of those kind of mergers fail.
When you say that Pixar people had no contracts, do you mean as employees?
Employee, there was no contract. Everybody could just. They also had no work hours. They had you could work at home. Most people did work at home because of the environment, the buzz that was there. The creative energy. And of course, Pixar was at 45 or 48 times earnings, and Disney, as I recall, was at 16 or 17 times earnings. But what made all that go away is not $1 was exchanged. It was a cashless transaction, just like Sellers Finance, because it was shares for shares. And remember, even when they're expensive, shares are still monopoly money. I mean, very few people, other than Jobs, who spent $50 million keeping it afloat for several years, other than Jobs, had any money in the deal. The employees had stock options, both at Disney Corporation and at Pixar. So nobody had any hard cash in the deal except Steve. Okay, and whatever shares that that were owned by the executives, which were suits, they used to call them suits at Disney, because they were very corporate, they still are, is that their stock options were granted 10, 20 years ago, and Disney's, at $3 a share, and now Disney's, was at multiples. So this even a bad acquisition wasn't going to hurt the corporate executive team, other than by reputation. It wasn't going to hurt their dollar value or the equity value in the company. But when Jobs got Iger thrown out, the first chairman, he knew he had leverage. He pretended he had leverage before that, as you do when you negotiate. But when they tossed a well-respected guy like him out on his ass.
That turned around Disney the first time.
Correct. I mean, fuck. But Disney was in dire straits. I mean, they weren't doing well. Now nobody in their wildest imagination thought that they were going to represent 50-60% of the profits that Disney would make ongoing with all the blockbuster movies. I mean, in their wildest dreams. Of course, Jobs told them that we're going to, I think he said, we're going to represent 50% of the profit here. He just flapping his lips. He didn't know shit. I mean, he had no basis for that. But then when the first few years it was 60%, but Steve wanted to go back, and at the time the decision was being made, nobody thought that Steve was going to ever go back to Apple. Now there were discussions that nobody knew about, but they said, so when you put all that water and oil together, there's virtually no likelihood that it could succeed. Knowing, as M&A guys know, that 90-95% of all transactions, big companies fail because of culture clash. Now, if we had known that they're going to keep it separate, if we had known that Jobs was going to leave and go back to Apple, if we had known those things, there would have been a lot more support for the deal. But just looking at it on paper, and for me, it was too small a deal. I didn't think that small an acquisition could impact a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I had no idea that the movies, when they're making $1 billion a pop or whatever they're doing, and then when I attached my negativity for the movie business, I remember sitting down with producers and directors, and we're going on Golden Time when we made the movie Caligula. Golden Time is triple time, and they work slower at triple time. Everybody works slower, so a star gets a migraine headache, and they need a couple hours, and then they don't want to come back to work the next day. And you pay these people, and at 2 or 3 in the morning, they'll say, okay, cut it for a day, she's not coming back. Or you paid 8 hours at triple time, and they're not interested in who made money, if it made money. I remember asking Sir John Gielgud something to the effect, well, how much money have your movies made? He looked at me like I was speaking Greek to him. Actually, sir, I have no idea if we made any money. Because they don't care. Now they've tied the actors to the gross. You know, it's a joke if they tie them to the net, because the movies, they'll figure out a way for them never to make money. But they tie them to the gross, and of course, that's why you think Tom Cruise likes going on TV programs and selling his stuff, 3 weeks before the movie starts? Probably not. And so, but now
he likes his check.
Oh yeah, he likes his check. And
so part of their contract, they have to promote the movie.
Oh yeah, now than used to.
Yeah.
Well, it's in they're incentivized to promote it because that's their money, right?
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, in years gone by, that wasn't the case. But it was a classic, great acquisition, because hindsight shows that they produce all these blockbusters, and it's pretty much still managed similar to the way that it used to be managed. They have a lot of latitude to do whatever they want. They can start new projects. There's some loose form of a budget, but not a real budget. But they've made billions and billions. It's not that they look the other way, but they look the other way. They produce all these billions.
It's interesting how they describe that the animation people who work on the projects, that they have to think like movies, like people who are actually actors, not the people who are just the animators. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, and they have to get out of their comfort zone, outside their own personal box, and but I mean, animation, schmanimation. I mean, who would have thought that was going to change the model, the movie model that people go to see so much? And of course, nobody knew about streaming and all those things that now exist. Who would have thought that any of that was possible? Now, arguably, Steve Jobs did. And there's maybe 10 of him in the last 100 years, or maybe less. Walt Disney did. He made over 300 presentations. Everybody said no to Disneyland. Just as when he came up with Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse, he didn't make 300 presentations, but he made 20 or 50, and finally found somebody to support him. But when he came around to getting money for Disneyland, he made over 300 presentations. And everybody said, "Are you crazy? Parents aren't going to want to take their kids on the weekend to, are you nuts?" And TV had just started. Television in the early 50s. And so they would sit home on the TV. First TV we had was about this big. And of course now, if you've got kids of that age, you get nagged to take those kind of theme parks. But the idea of theme park wasn't even occupying one pencil of anybody. And Mr. Disney didn't call it theme park till after. Because now, the theme park's every place. And you do take your kids on the weekend, holidays, and now they got hotels. Nobody ever thought, Holiday Inn was one of the first at Disneyland to build a hotel next to it. They were going to build a hotel in Orange County, but it's about 200 yards from the park, and now it's connected by monorail. They connect them, but nobody thought about those kinds of things.
So, is there any learning lessons from knowing what you know now, but at the time of the Disney?
No, I still wouldn't have done it because it was too small. Because I would have never thought that they could create the kind of revenue they did to impact a much larger corporation. All I know is when billions takes over hundreds of millions, that it's not going to impact it that much.
Jobs says himself that he wouldn't have purchased it if he knew. Because I think he put $50 million of his own money. Started with 10 and then $50 million. But I felt like he felt stuck with it and he had to make it work because he had put too much.
Operative word, had to. You put a gun to your kid's head.
Yeah.
You got a week to get it done, kid, or I blow the little shit's head off. Then you make shit happen. You have to feel under the gun, though. And that's why I spent 125%, and I'm not suggesting you do this, 125% of every penny I made, because I wanted to always feel under the gun. Always. And I came close to getting hit by those bullets 2 or 3 times, but I might have got grazed once, but I always got it done. I used to be, they used to call me Hail Mary, Dan. I'm throwing those Hail Mary passes the last 7 seconds of the game, but I'm throwing them to myself. I'm running down there and I'm catching them, but I've got a lot of deals done on Hail Marys. And then you get, it's like Brady until he lost in the playoffs here, Tom Brady. He's so used to pulling it out at the end. He's so used to pulling that rabbit out at the end. And then this last time, that's the first time I've ever seen him look dejected on TV.